Hey, thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm going to try and share my screen and see if that works like it is supposed to. Looking okay to everybody? Beautiful. Okay, as Darlene mentioned, I am Jamie Ward. I'm a professor over at Eastern.
I'm Alisa Agozzino, and I teach at Ohio Northern University. And Jamie and I met in grad school and then went our different ways, but then both were teaching public relations and not super impressed with our books that we were using. We thought they were a little dry. And so we thought maybe we could combine together and with the help of Stu Kent have been able to produce a book that we were kind of teaching out of already, which was our own ideas and our own things and how we think it should be built. And now we hope that you find it to be helpful as well. But we're not here to teach you about our book.
We are here to talk about escape rooms. So I'm hoping that several of you have either done escape rooms, have watched the Schitt's Creek episode where they've done an escape room, or have a little bit of background on escape rooms. But for those of you who don't, I'm going to give you just a general overview of kind of escape rooms. So an escape room is really an immersive game. So it's an immersive experience where a team or a bunch of players together really race against a clock to decipher a bunch of clues, logic puzzles. We search for hidden objects and accomplish tasks in one or more rooms in order to escape the room and essentially win the game, right? So the idea is to get you out of that room or rooms, plural. So I've participated in several different types of escape rooms, and I always found them to be a lot of fun. I've done a traditional escape room, which is an in-person escape room, which is more traditional, right? Where a group of friends and I were locked in a room and had to use a series of clues to get a key to leave the room. It was timed. We had to use combined knowledge, the combined knowledge we had as a group. Again, it wasn't for a class project, to figure out all of the different clues, kind of random trivia, so to speak. One clue led to the next clue or so on in order to escape. I've also done lots of different escape rooms with my kids. The most recent was a Harry Potter escape room at our local library. And Alisa, you're smiling. And I bring this up because escape rooms, depending on how they're designed, can fit a variety of different age ranges, classrooms, materials, right? The rooms all maintain the same premise: find a way to escape using all of the clues that you're provided. The only difference is in the content and the way that they're crafted. So in the Harry Potter one, for example, since it was all Harry Potter focused, all of the clues related back to either the film or the book, right? For those Harry Potter fans, we had like find the flying key with the correct letter on it to open a box, or find the missing puzzle piece to the Marauder map, or locate a specific phrase on the spine of a book, right? You get the idea, all of those different kind of clue things. So when Alisa and I were talking about ways to engage students and get them interested in PR history, the idea of an escape room came up. We all know it's been a tremendous challenge to get students to read and really retain information that they deem uninteresting. So we decided to get them reading by gamifying content. We wanted to take them on a journey through PR history in a way that was engaging, but that also taught them the things we needed them to learn. So they had those key takeaways. So since the escape room allows the creator to craft the clues in the way that they need to, the creator gets to decide on the content, the goals. It fit for us. And I think that it will fit with all of you because, again, different classrooms, different types of content, all dependent on the engager. So for us, it was the perfect way to take students on that introductory journey.
So I get to cover the learning objectives for today's session. And while we would love to teach you all the interworkings of the digital escape room, there's just not, you're just going to skim the top. And just like our book, we are more than willing to do one-on-ones with you, or if you have questions afterwards. and want to follow up with us, we're going to have our contact information at the end. We are more than happy to, because we did this, like when we first started developing our digital escape rooms, we talked with a lot of experts that had built them and done them, because they're really easy to use if someone's already done them, right? But if you want to make it specific to your content and whatever you're teaching in the classroom, it's really cool to have your own digital escape room. So we're going to talk about the importance of setting up and using these escape rooms, just from the background, cognitive learning assessment type things that you have to put in all the reports, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to learn some best practices for those escape rooms. So as we have built a couple of these now, we've learned where we've went wrong, right? And where we have sat on numerous webinars with others trying to figure out, okay, we're stuck at this point. Like, we got them out there and it's great, but how do we get them back? You know, those types of questions. So we're going to teach you some of the things that we've learned from trial and error, and then also touch on some foundational steps for setting up your own escape room. And like I said, we're not going to be able to go out and show you the back end of our escape rooms. We're going to show you screenshots of what ours look like and things of that nature. We'd love to have the time to show you the back end and how to build it specifically, but we're only going to get into the very basics of that part. And we hope that if you're really interested, that you'll reach out and we'll be able to follow up with you and give you some more insight on that end.
So game-based learning is really kind of just this methodology that focuses on the educational potential of games, right? If you think about it, we've been learning game-based learning through most of our educational years, right? We play games as kids, kind of in elementary, right? To teach them numbers, to teach them to read. And that kind of gamification goes on through kind of middle school, high school, and more often than I'm seeing more and more often in higher ed as well, right? Students want to continue kind of that game-based learning. They like to be challenged. Those challenges create motivation for them. So we've taken those same kind of game-based learning concepts and applied them to the escape room. Millennial and Gen Z students, right? They want active engagement. They want to be doing something, right? They're motivated by achievement, their affiliation, right? They like compelling activities to increase their interest. Very few students on any evals that I've ever read have said, I really enjoyed lecture. I want to sit through more lecture. So in addition to this motivational aspect, escape rooms also really keep students engaged, right? Setting a timer for the escape room motivates them to act quickly. We want them moving quickly through things. They have to answer questions based on what they know. There's not a lot of time for them to go back and look things up to find additional content. Students are really competitive, right? So this is why Kahoot, if any of you do Kahoots in your classroom, it's why they're so popular. They like to see that they're winning. They like this kind of gamification elements to it. Students like to see that they can answer things faster than their friends. They want to see that they're winning. Use this to your benefit. So it encourages them to do the prep work. So if you have them reading a section, say on history, so that they learn the content before the escape room, they're going to be more likely to read so that they can actually get out of that escape room before their friends, right? It's this idea of prepping them to do the work. The more prep they are, the faster they can move through the content, the easier overall this will be for them. The more fun it will be for them.
So you're quickly going to find out that the power of the URL is your best friend in building these escape rooms. And that is because a lot of the content that you're going to get or that you want students to retain is found through something else, right? So it's found through other websites, it's found through other people's documents, or maybe it's a document or a form that you've built. Maybe it's a forum, maybe it's a website, maybe it's a puzzle. And there's all kinds of fun stuff in how you kind of build those. There's all kinds of fun stuff, elements that you can add to that. And again, we're going to touch base on some of our most popular and easiest to implement quickly if you're just now starting off building an escape room. But that URL is going to be, so why that's so important is you might build it in a different program, right? We're going to talk about Jigsaw Planet for puzzles, and you might build that Jigsaw Planet, but you can just simply put it through an URL into your digital escape room, and it will send them out to that. And then you can have the clue be that, and then come back to the room after you have the clue and to keep moving. So we're going to find out more about these links and how powerful they are, but that URL is going to be incredibly important.
So when you start putting your escape room together, one of the most important things to remember is that you need a story. There has to be some type of story. You can't just throw together a bunch of challenges. The students will get lost. They have to understand how one step links to the next step, links to the next step. So for example, again, Alisa and I are PR professors. So when we were learning about PR history, students have to understand how one historical artifact or tool links to the next. You have to help them make those connections. So if we talk about Edward Bernays, and then we talk about Inez Kaiser, Betsy Plank, again, all significant figures in PR history, we have to explain to students how they all link together for purposes of this game. So make sure your story makes sense. Thinking about stories, ours is dealing with a PR classroom and trying to escape a PR classroom, but other kind of more generic stories could be you visit a museum, right? You're interested in all of the archival content in that museum. You're so invested in the content that you lose track of time. The museum closes, locking you and your classmates in. You're panicked, you're searching for a way out. In your search for a security guard or anyone still in the building that evening, you notice a set of keys on the desk inside one of the offices. In order to retrieve the keys or get out of the building, you have to follow a set of clues, right? So it's just enough of a story to get them kind of immersed in the experience. Then each clue gets you closer and closer to getting out of that locked office, because that's part of the story. The clues, again, build one upon the next upon the next. So maybe you find a note on an exit door. Again, remember, it's virtual. So you'll have to put that note on that virtual classroom door that leads you to a passage in a textbook. And after reading the passage, you're led to a location for another clue that helps you get that key, right? It's crucial that the clues, again, keep building with the original story idea. Everything has to link back to that original story. Remember, you're trying to give them an immersive type of experience. So the more detail that you can provide and the more creative you are with the story, the more students are going to be able to enjoy it and really play along with the idea. If the clues don't make sense, or if they don't help build the story, you're going to lose them. And then they're just going to start playing click and click all over in your slides or in your presentation, just trying to get out. So your goal is to keep them from wanting to cheat or do whatever they can to get out. You want them to have fun, and enough fun that they actually want to continue playing the game. They don't want to try and look for ways to essentially cheat the system.
We think one of the biggest benefits of Stu Kent, and I think just in the award that was just given, the recipient had mentioned this too, like the beauty of Stu Kent is how often the books are updated and how often things are changed in the book. So they're pretty current. And we just love that we can use our course content then to solve these real world case studies, or to solve a problem and to discover or to reinforce that course content that's already done. And this is just an example from our book of the Colin Kaepernick's collaboration with Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And it comes from the book, but the cool thing about and Jamie talking about storytelling is that you could easily tie your digital escape room to a particular thing that's current, or a case study that you want to dive into a little bit more within the course content. And it doesn't matter what the particular course content is about, but it more so has to do with you know, how you relate that and how you can use this gamification to make it exciting and kind of bring life to it. And then having them dig a little bit deeper than just, the little paragraph or so that's in the book about a particular case study, but really exploring that a little bit more in depth. And that story, if it's tied to it in the digital escape room, can give students either reinforce that course content that already exists, or maybe to discover, or how would they go about a different problem or solve a problem differently. Or where do you think the particular company or brand went over rogue? But digital escape rooms kind of give you that opportunity too. And timing is such a part of the digital clock, of course, is such a part of a real escape room. Whereas the digital escape rooms, you can set that clock, or you could just let it just until they reach the end, right? So it kind of can be built in different ways. We've set up rooms that have been set up for 15-minute activities. And then we have some that goes for, Jamie and I had a video in there one time that lasted an hour and 10 minutes. And we're like, well, this is going to be like a whole lecture, like a whole week chapter. Like, we're going to have to cut this down or find something, a way for them to get to it quicker. So I think it's a really cool way to bring some of that to life.
For those of you that are feeling extra creative, right, and who are really interested and anxious to dive into this, you can link your virtual escape room to the real world, right? So there's ways to take it off of the computer. One idea might be that towards the end of your escape room, right, one of your clues tells your students to locate a physical copy of a special textbook in the school's library, right? So the first student or group of students to essentially get to the book and open it, following all the clues, will get some type of reward. It could be a gift card, it could be candy, whatever motivates your particular students. This allows the students to not only move through the virtual clues, right, but it also allows them to engage with physical content in, again, a library or a classroom. It adds kind of to that competitive nature, the competitive elements of some of those things. I know my students are always motivated by prizes, right? They love them some prizes. Candy, gift cards, even extra credit is a prize. So they enjoy that reward component. If the library link doesn't work for you, there are lots of other ways to tie it to kind of more interactive or kind of face-to-face activities. If you have a PRSSA chapter or other student org at your school, you can enlist the help of those students or those chapters. You could align your escape room activity with a PRSSA meeting. Or even speaking content. If they bring in speakers at your chapters, you can align it to speaking content. I did something that aligned with QR codes. So I had students follow QR codes to get different types of clues after PR meetings. So you can do lots of different things to take this offline and face-to-face. You could add an interdisciplinary component to it, partner with other departments on campus, other agencies or businesses that you have close relationships with. Again, I don't recommend you sending students going into businesses if you don't have super close relationships with them. But if you have close relationships with nonprofits or other orgs, you might want to bring them in and tie them into the escape room experience as well. The only limit is your creativity, well, and time. And Alisa mentioned time. So time is always a factor in everything. So whether you want it to be a one class period or a week-long escape room, right? As long as you're sticking to that original story, you can develop a set of clues that seamlessly transition back and forth between kind of that virtual and real world content. One of the best parts for me in terms of developing escape rooms was, besides certainly creating the stories, was creating all of the images. So when you create a classroom, you want to develop images that link to the content, right? That link to the content you want students to learn. So that really focus on the things you want students to take away. But you also have to remember to create all of the images that link to random content. Otherwise, it's no fun for them. So you want to make sure that you think through the content you want them to learn, but you also have a lot of fun with random content that leads them nowhere, that doesn't help them kind of advance throughout the game. That's the whole idea of the game. So when you have click happy students who are just clicking all over slides, if you do this in Google Slides, You'll want to make sure you have unrelated things so that it makes it harder for them. They can't just click through. They have to really know the answers. So in our escape room, and we'll show you these in just a few minutes, the next few slides down kind of show you samples of the escape room that Alisa and I created. There, you can click on a framed photo of a woman near a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes. The Lucky Strike brand is affiliated with Edward Bernays' Torches of Freedom campaign. Right? So it's a historic kind of PR campaign, often used in classrooms. We talk about it a lot in our textbook and in the classroom. You can use it to talk about strategies or tactics or audience, or you can talk about it as being kind of one of the first PR campaign. If one of my questions was, find the photo depicting the first PR campaign, I'd certainly want that image, but I'd also want a ton of other images so that they would have to know what they're looking to click on. So maybe I'd add links to photos that were not of that campaign, right? I could add, right, Coca-Cola, or I mean, anything, Nike, Levi's, any other brands, just to kind of throw them off. So when they click on those things, it doesn't lead them to the next clue. It's kind of a dead link. It has a picture, maybe something else could pop up, but it doesn't lead them in the way that they need to. It doesn't advance them through the game. It adds to the challenge, and it keeps students consistently engaged.
You can't do digital escape rooms without some challenges, as we've discovered. The first being, which is it's time consuming to make and sometimes to play, as I already mentioned. But to build them, if you're building your own, it takes a little bit of time, especially your first one. I think the first one's always the rough one, right? Like that you're trying to figure it out, but then they do get a little bit easier. And I think, well, I know at least with our experience, like we wanted it to be a whole class period, the whole 50-minute period. So we were trying to make sure that we had enough time, enough stuff for them to do the entire time, but that not too much stuff. And it's just it's kind of a trial and error to make sure that you get it within that time that you need it to be, and that it's doable, that you can actually escape and do it within the time frame. We also found that getting them back to the room, if we're leading them outside through those URLs, that was a challenge too, because there are programs that you can build links within videos, but they're kind of pricey. And so we were trying to keep this to pretty minimum as far as when we were building them, to keep them to a minimum of, as far as cost, trying to do everything for free. And so we would get them out to places, but then we were like, okay, went out there and they watched the video on this website, but what's leading them back into the room? And so that's sometimes a challenge, especially if you don't want to pay for the extra things to get them back. Without you really have to make sure that the clue or whatever you're leading them out, they have to do whatever it is out on that URL that you led them out to, so that they come back with the answer. And then when they come back, like there's a way to plug that in to keep them going through the game. You always have the click happy students. And so if you make it really incredibly easy, they just start clicking around the room until they click to the right thing. And then they're just, they divide and conquer. They're all like, okay, everyone take, whatever, and clicking on something else, and they're all going out to different places. So if you make it incredibly easy to find and it takes no time, then you have the click happy students that figure it out very quickly, that if we divide and conquer and everybody takes one of these, videos or URL links that you've linked out to and tries to find the clue, then, in 5 minutes, they're all back and they're like, okay, we're done. We found it. We're done. The opposite end of that is making it too difficult to fit within that time period. I did see in the chat, and I know we shouldn't be answering questions till the end, but I'm going to address the question of cheaters. Like, what do you do when people send you like the answers or another? I haven't personally, in my classroom, they're so competitive that once I put them on the team, they're not sharing answers with other teams because they want to be the first team to complete it. There's usually some incentive, and it's not always like, the most points or something of that nature. It's usually for my class, and I know everyone does this differently, but like for mine, it's just something to drill in the content that they've been learning in the class. So it's more just for funsies. But for the cheaters, I haven't had too much problem with that. But I also have done the ultimate thing for mine is we are in person, so it's not totally all digital at the end. I know Jamie is a lot more digital, all online than I am, but I make that extra step. And because we're talking about history and we're talking about Ed Bernays, and his first book was Crystallizing PR, whatever, that's in our library. So if they get to that level and they go over to the library, there's a Post-it note in the back of that book. I'm pretty sure no one's checking it out. Hasn't been checked out for years, so I'm not too concerned about that part, but there's a Post-it note in the back of it. And during this exercise, or when I do this particular escape room, I make sure that it's there. And then that Post-it note's in the back that says, bring this Post-it note back for Aggie for your, that's where they get the bonus points. If their team gets, like, I think it's 5 points or something on the final exam, if they bring back that Post-it note, that they were the team that went all the way through the digital escape room. So you just have to make sure that you find that time, and you make sure that it fits within that time, and that the book's there and those types of things. But there's some extra work that goes into that too. But I think it's so much fun, and the kids always comment about it on the teaching evaluations that it seems to make it worth it for at least me. As far as setting up the story, and Jamie talked a little bit, so I'm not going to spend a great deal of time with this because we're going to start going into like the different parts of this and the basics needed. But if the pretext is needed, you got to build in time for this. So like Jamie said, if you have a story, and some can be very elaborate, some can be very, very basic, and you can do both sides. I think after you build it, then it's easy, right? Semester after semester, you can use the same thing as far as the pretext of the story, but the first time building it can take some time. If you have any puzzles or videos, those also can explain part of that story. So again, this is building on the front end of it. If you're setting up the story and you want them to watch a video or watch a puzzle, again, you just have to know that on the front end, that they have to do that in order to come to the class to understand what you're doing as far as the digital escape room when they actually get there. And then finally, the directions got to be clear enough to understand if you're leading students to other sites, like how do we get back? And I think we just keep drilling that in because that was such a big part for us, that we had all these great ideas and we would get them out places. And then we're like, oh, okay, well, where do they put that? Like, okay, they went and watched this video, or they went and put this puzzle together and it gave them a clue, but then what's the next slide, or how did they know to advance, and those types of things. So if you're doing that and you want these extra outside materials and you want to build them in and direct them out, you have to understand, they have to understand how they get back, or where they put that information that they've learned from that external site into the digital escape room in order to advance to the next slide on your end.
As Alisa mentioned, getting back was a key thing. So we put together this escape room. We made all the components. We added photos. We put pictures. We added things to shelves and did lots of different things with our images. We were thrilled with how it turned out. Then we walked through it and decided we didn't think about how to get the students back. All we did was give them these links to these great sites with all this great content, but never told them they needed to come back to us. So we essentially sent them out onto the internet in the middle of our classrooms and told them to look around. A dangerous precedent to do in a college classroom, right? So we decided that we were gonna have a slide be our home base. Students would follow links to other sites to locate content and to find answers to questions, but that they would always have to come back to satisfy the clue. They had to come back home. So an example of this might be, find an example of press agentry and click on the clue. So they would go out, find press agentry, read the information we wanted them to find, then come back here, click on the clue that shows the type of communication that was explained. So we're always forcing them to come back to that homepage and provide information to get that next clue. The coming back home, I can't stress this enough, and Alisa stressed it, is the key component here. Because if you get them out, you have to somehow lead them back to guide them through those next clues. So you want them to get into the habit of always coming back to that home base. We created our escape room in Google Slides. We found that was the easiest thing for us. Again, we watched lots of different creators create different types of escape rooms, and Google Slides seemed to work the best for us. With Google Slides, you want to allow them to move through the slideshow in present mode, like what we're doing here. Otherwise, they'll see all the information on the side of the screen. And if they see it, they're going to be more enticed to do that cheating or kind of to peek ahead. So the opening should give some type of a background, the story. And again, like Alisa mentioned, it can be a puzzle, it can be a video, it can be just kind of text on the screen. And then within the slides are the images. So for ours, we have two main classroom images, and students move between essentially PR classrooms, or you can just have them in one classroom for a much shorter kind of escape room. Within those classrooms, we included other images, like I previously discussed, lots of different kind of components to the classrooms. You can add websites, you can add video, you can add PDFs, you can add Word documents, you can link to all of those things as long as, again, you're bringing them back for the content. You can link to other slides. So within Google Slides, you can link to other slides within your show so they can move ahead and move backwards. So you can program other content within your Google Slides. As long as you provide a link to move you back and forth, that's the key. It highlights the different types of clues that you're presenting. On some of ours, we created envelopes within the slides that when you click on the envelope, another clue appears. To find the answer to that clue, you get the answer, and then again, always go back to that home base, that home screen. In addition to some of those things with the Google Slides, kind of images, links, URLs, we also added some puzzles and other things, which Alisa is going to talk to you about on the next slides.
Well, before we get to that, we don't want to forget about Google Forms, and just mentioning, just quickly, you all know what Google Forms is. If you haven't built one, honestly, I had not built one until I did it for these digital escape rooms, but it's super easy. And of course, it talks to Google Slides very nicely. And that's how when we got them back in order to advance, they would have to correctly fill out the Google form. And so when they got the right answer within the Google form that they've gathered from the outside content, when we brought them back in, that would advance them to the next slide. Another cool thing that we've used, I think, is on the next slide, called Jigsaw Planet. And I really wanted to take you out here because it's such a cool program. And it's free as long as you don't, want to build 3,000 of these. After a certain limit, they start charging you, but it's still pretty nominal fee. But at any rate, you can pick the number of puzzle pieces and how intense you want it to be. So you can see here, I don't think we have this example on our slide deck, but in our slide rooms, we take a picture of a screen that they should know throughout the book. It's the Museum of Public Relations is a website. It's the screen capture of like their website. And that should give them an idea of where they should go to look for that clue, that particular clue in that exact sentence that they're looking for. So we didn't have it be too extensive. I think ours is only maybe 25 or 30 pieces. It's not super intense. We know that it's going to take them about 3 minutes to put together and then to process it as a group. We're hoping that at least 5 minutes of time will be built into that. And as you practice it more and more, you'll see how long it takes students to put together the puzzle pieces and kind of figure out that part of it. Because you kind of need a guinea pig group when you start some of this stuff to see how long it takes to get through it. Because again, you don't want to make it too easy, but you don't want to make it too hard that they'll never get through the digital escape room either. So you kind of have to play around with that. But Jigsaw Planet is a great free program that you can do, and to make, if you have other images that you use in your classroom, or if it could even be a clue. You could build the clue, take a screenshot of it, and that could be your image that you have them put together. So endless possibilities, but we love the Jigsaw Planet because it's cheap and it's fun. The next one I want to talk about is InShot. And InShot is probably my ultimate favorite app ever. I learned about it when I went to a conference and presented with someone else about presenting on social media, and he did this portion of it, and it has by far exceeded all of my expectations. It's really cheap, I think, for the annual fee. I did the 2-week trial or the 1-week trial, and then I bought it for a year. And I think the yearly subscription's around $15. The lifelong subscription is $35. So save yourself the time and just buy the lifelong subscription the first year instead of wasting a year and then getting the lifelong. Because it really is intuitive. It's very easy. It's an app on your phone, and it's a way to make videos. And I just think it's so easy. I do a lot of this for social content that we put out. But when you want to incorporate this into your escape room, this is an easy way to do a 1-minute video that you put together. And you could even use real people at your university or photos. I think ours has photos of them doing different things, but and then we incorporated other things that have nothing to do with it, just to kind of throw them off as distractors, but they have to watch the entire video to kind of understand where the connection is. And so InShot's a great way to do that because it's very easy, and it doesn't, again, you can use the 2-week trial and try it out, use what you want to use for your little digital escape room and then move on. Or if you think you might use it for other stuff, I just love this program. Doodly is the next one that we want to talk about. This I learned about on one of our industry tours when they did the safety video at the company, Fortune 500 company that we were at. They said, oh my gosh, the guy that did PR that was giving us the tour and talking about PR within the company said, oh, we have to watch a safety video first. And I want to see your reaction because I did this myself and it's so easy. And I was telling Jamie before when we were putting this in here, I said, I've only used it once to see if I could use it. I haven't used it extensively, but it could be really cool to incorporate into your digital escape room as well. And the base is very affordable. As you move up and you have more, then that's when it becomes more pricey, but a very cool program. And if you could use it for multiple things beyond just your digital escape room, if you have to run social content for somebody or something of that nature, very cool animation software. And then, oh, this is Jane.
We are running super short on time. I think we have about 3 minutes left. So I'm going to skip kind of our idea. I think Alisa and I have both explained to you kind of where our idea originally stemmed from, and move to showing you some samples of the screens that we use. This is one of the rooms that we have in our escape room. And we have added a lot of the images in here. So the plane was added, and we added them in Canva. So we took the base image and then added everything else in Canva, moved the image into Google Slides to add all of the links. So the plane was added, the one-way sign was added, the sticky notes were added, microphone, kind of phone, this fun little mannequin. We changed this picture, as I mentioned, the lucky strikes. We added the treasure box. So when you add all these components, again, to the base image, you can move it into the Google Slides and then add links to them.
And I think the other thing too is when you add, which we won't get into too much, we're going to show you where the links actually are, but a lot of these are dummy links, right, that lead out to nothing or no clue and have nothing to do with what we're talking about in the digital escape room. And we hope that students click on them and spend some time, that it sounds important and sounds like you should go out and learn about giving a press conference on YouTube. It's relevant to what we do in PR. It's under the podcasting microphone there. So we hope that they click on it and they go listen to it, but it really has nothing to do with the next clue that they're trying to get. So they could spend time here and they would still be learning things about public relations. And again, it has an external URL, so we're leading them out to YouTube. But when they come back and they get to that next clue, it really did not, it helped them advance within this particular digital escape room.
And these again are just other examples. So the one-way sign would lead to the models of public relations. If they went out and read that, again, that could lead you to the next clue, which might be two-way communication, which we have the Southwest behind every seat is a story campaign. And it's a strong example of two-way communication that we actually use in our book. So again, linking the one clue to the next clue. I think we are out of time. Alisa and I can stick around for a little bit if you have any additional questions. Again, I know we didn't get to a lot of your questions, but we're happy to hang out a little bit if we can address some of those questions quickly.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I loved learning about how you guys created this, especially because this is not what I experienced when I was in college. And I feel like it would have just amplified the experience I had. So very impressive. We do have a few questions. Someone asked, how many escape rooms do you usually do during a semester? I know you mentioned that they can be difficult to make, but do you
I think if
normally
you find some out like that you can use from other people, like you could do mini like 15-minute ones, or maybe you just create a 15-minute one. Jamie and I created one for chapter 2. Like the history chapter, this whole thing is built to amplify our chapter 2, which is all on history. So we just use it for that particular chapter. But I mean, as our goal is to kind of have some of these built within the book so that we can kind of go to them as fun activities a couple times throughout the semester.
Awesome. Do you guys have, since you kind of both, one of you does it in person, one of you does it digital, do you have an opinion on a virtual escape room versus an in-person one?
I think it's really easy to use the digital one, especially on the online when you don't have them face to face. That's why we loved it, because especially with the pandemic and sending everybody home, like this was something that we could totally do online. However, when we came back to campus, I wanted a way, if I have them sitting in the room in front of me and all on computers, like I wanted some in-person element to that. So that's why we do the in-person part of that. So I like it because they're there and it's just a way to be connected, and they're so secretive in their little groups doing it because they want to be the first on. They want the 5 bonus points. So I did see someone ask about how much percentage of the final exam. I don't use it as any part of my final exam. I just use it as bonus for the final exam, should they be the team that finishes first and gets that clue. But I mean, you could do, I think that's a personal prof decision of how much you want to incorporate that into your coursework.
That's awesome. There's one more question. I think this one's a little bit more about how you set it up, but they asked, where do the clues appear? They'll see the image with the clue at the bottom, but is that like, I guess, how do they know where to click?
It depends how it's set up. So again, sometimes you can have envelopes in the slides that a clue can pop out of the envelope. You can ask them on the slides to be searching for something, and then the next slide, they're looking in that home screen. That's why it's so important that they're always directed back to that home screen to find the content, because then you can use other slides to create clues.